It's open, sorry. No, not yet. I'll tell you when it's
Oh,
just 75.
the owls should blink. Owls don't blink, do they? I'll call the meeting to order for Thursday, December 12th, our budget meeting. Disclosure of pecuniary interest, if anybody has some, please forward it through to Marcy. And approval of the agenda. Moved by Ina, seconded by Michelle, all in favor? Carried. Opening comments. I apologize for missing yesterday, but it was, we had an exciting event, opening a build for a new long-term care in North Middlesex. And so it was an exciting event, and it's been a lot of work to get to that point. And Brent, you're aware of how much work there's been to get to that. So our discussions this morning begin with Strathmere Lodge. And Brent, your presentation.
Okay. Morning, everyone. Just to remind you all that the lodge is a 160-bed long-term care home built in 2006. So I guess we're 18 years plus now. The lodge, that is. It is a medium-sized home. It's 160 beds is considered really the optimum size in terms of economies of scale. So the county did right by building a home this size. The lodge is one of 6 long-term care homes in Middlesex County. Nelson Craig, the one in Nelson Craig being a charitable home. And then the others would be your for-profit chain belonging to a chain home. The lodge serves largely frail elderly, providing 24-hour nursing care. We do have some younger adults, people with neurodegenerative diseases like MS and Parkinson's and such. But I would say probably the average age is about 85 in terms of health. The lodge is located in Strathmere Caradoc. When you look at admissions, it does appear on the surface that a lot of residents are coming from outside of Middlesex, but largely it's due to the fact that they have family. So the stats, family in the area, family in Strathmere Caradoc, Middlesex County, the actual resident may be living in another part of the province, but family is coordinating care and bringing them closer to them. So that's admissions. And then as far as legislation is concerned and applicable legislation, long-term care is highly legislated. Lots of sectors, I guess, claim to be highly legislated. I've heard it said that long-term care is second to the nuclear power generation field in terms of applicable legislation. I'm not sure that's true, but we are highly legislated, governed principally by the Fixing Long-Term Care Act. We have an agreement with Ontario Health, a long-term care home service accountability agreement that outlines a host of things that we have to do, and things like regular reporting to the province on financial, statistical, and healthcare data. And then the province also requires long-term care homes to do an annual quality improvement plan, which is brought before council in March of every year. Statistical information, CMI case mix index. can be confusing to appreciate. It's a number that is derived from the quarterly health assessments done on each resident. That's a provincial requirement. The residents get grouped into clinical groupings, and each of those groupings has a CMI, and that reflects the amount of resources that are required to care for them. The CMI gets multiplied by the annual per diem the province establishes for each of the funding envelopes. So in nursing, there's a per diem. It's now about $110 a day. So the CMI gets multiplied by that, multiplied by 160 beds in the case of Lodge, multiplied by 365 days a year, and that's how the nursing funding is derived. And then there's other traditional funding envelopes for recreation, for resident food, and for what's called other accommodations, which is sort of everything else besides nursing, food, and recreation. So the CMI, we can approximate based on that health assessment information that we have, but it then gets manipulated by the province every year in terms of their decision on how much they want to increase nursing funding. So if everyone's CMI, if every home's CMI goes up 10%, but the province only wants to increase funding by 3%, the province then essentially statistically manipulates everyone's CMI, sort of bell curves it, if you will, for lack of a better word. So we don't know what that number ends up being. We can sort of approximate, but we can't establish exactly. What we do know for 2025, 26 is that it will go down versus our current year that we're in. And then next year, we already know that it'll go back up. So we know we have health information, health assessment information into the future. The CMI there's always a lag. The province uses data from 1 to 2 years ago. So that's the CMI for when they announce it in March and April will be health assessment data going back 1 to 2 years. But we have current data that tells us 26, 27, our CMI will be higher. So yeah, and we don't know, of course, what provincial funding will be when we are doing our budget. Traditionally, we learn in the springtime what the province is going to do with regard to each of the per diems and anything else that they're going to fund, because there is, apart from the traditional funding envelopes, there's different pots of money that the province comes up with for things like infection control, which of course is important post-pandemic. So the province does recognize that and funds us for that. In terms of pressures, of course, our legislation is onerous and unannounced inspections, et cetera, there is hundreds of things that we need to comply with in terms of legislation. So lots of work in that regard. The other pressure is the fact that the lodge is getting on in age, 18 years plus, so it is showing signs of wear and tear, and we want to address that. Opportunities, we are part of the pilot project with MLPS, essentially to try to minimize the need to send residents to the emergency department, which is a key aim of the province and something that totally makes sense for residents and families at the lodge. So that's a program that's just started, and we hope to lower and minimize the need to send residents to hospital, to the emergency department, by having paramedics come and do things like blood testing, etc., to help us decide whether or not, in fact, a resident needs to go to us.
Through Brian, so is that just starting? Is that part of my ignorance, but part of this rapid response at LMPS, or is this something totally different, or has this been going on for 3 months or 2 months?
A
Or
few months
5
now.
weeks?
It's funded through the funding goes to MLPS. There's 2 pilot projects. There's pilot projects across the province, but in Middlesex, London, it's ourselves and DMS that are piloting this program right now.
You know, if I can add to that, I think, Sue, that once they completed their training, they were able to go, the approval was upon completion of training, I believe, correct?
Just to get the full picture.
Yeah. I do have a question on on all the legislation, like, do you have dedicated staff that actually just try to stay ahead of that, or how do you keep up with that?
I think
Because it changes.
It's part of everyone's role, really. We don't have, an appointed person.
Depending on what
that's-
area it's in, is that?
Yeah,
more-
the legislation deals with all departments and services across the home. So it could be nursing, could be recreation, could be dietary, housekeeping, maintenance. The legislation touches on
And
everything.
if I could just add to that, like the dietary, you have an outside agency that comes in from.
Yes.
Yeah, correct. So that's their job to stay on top of that as
Yes,
well.
they must be familiar with legislation. Keep on top.
Any other questions? Just one? No? Okay.
I'll move on to
So the next part, you talk about your pressures and opportunities, you gave a little bit of an overview of the budget. If you can kind of just a high level budget and kind of go through some of your revenues, any significant changes in the revenues that you're expecting, and then also some of the expenses, and then the changes for the expenses, and maybe you could talk about the legislation and some of the change in requirements as you're preparing for it. And as you move forward in 2025.
Excuse me, Cindy, these are numbers, the year to date, once again, are the end of September, correct?
Through the chair, yes, the numbers, there may be a couple minor accruals or edits that we do, but for the most part, it's the number that's in front of council.
So to start, I guess, the good news is that for 2025, the Strathmere Lodge ask, if you will, in terms of subsidy is quite a bit lower, which is largely due to capital. We've done our roof this year, which of course was costly. Council has been committed to the capital needs of the lodge, which has been great. I would also add that this year we got from the province something that's literally called one-time funding. So we've received a little bit over 400,000, which we have been using and still have projects to complete. These are things that help us to reduce the actual capital request before council today. In terms of revenue from the province, it does go up a lot from last year. Again, the province doesn't give us information on funding until the springtime, so it's very difficult to anticipate the funding envelopes and what increases will be received. But last spring, funding for nursing was increased 4.2%, for recreation 3.4%, for resident food 8.3%, which is sort of reflective of the cost of food. The ministry recognized that, and other accommodations actually went up quite substantially, 11.3%. That's not usually the case, but the ministry recognized that apart from nursing, recreation, and food, homes need to address those other types of areas: dietary, housekeeping, maintenance, etc. So they did give us an increase last spring, which I don't anticipate will be quite as generous, for example, this coming spring. So again, not able to really anticipate those envelope increases. Also, with regard to revenue, we received the last installment, if you will, of funding that the province committed to over the last few years for increasing direct care. So this is increasing RNs, RPNs, PSWs. So the last installment, the last increase of the multi-year provincial commitment was announced in the spring, and so that was quite a substantial increase in the final year of the commitment. So a big revenue increase, and what of course we want to do is increase our direct care hours as a result of that funding. So we do have plans, and that's reflected in the increase in salaries to increase the amount of RNs, RPNs, PSWs. And we want to add a nurse practitioner as well.
Through the chair to Brent, just want to confirm, so you mentioned you have some one-time funding that you received in 2024. I just want to be clear to the committee that when you're talking about this investment in long-term care, this is ongoing permanent funding.
Yes, that will, the nursing, the direct care fund, as it's called, it'll be permanent. It's been gradually increasing over the last 4 years. The final increase was last spring, and it'll be built into the all future.
Any questions on this at this point? Seeing none, I would ask, have we been able to fill those requirements that the province gives, like for staffing?
So
It's tough. I know.
we have been adding staffing, and with the amount we want to add, probably going to be in a position to start the recruitment and the hiring, the posting and the hiring in January. We want to add another full-time RN. And we just talked to ONA a couple of days ago about doing that and making sure we comply with collective agreement stuff around staffing. And we're going to add about a 1.5 RPN that'll go largely to night shift to bolster that up. 7 FTE PSWs, so we're going to increase the amount of PSWs during the daytime. Early in January, we'll be trying to recruit a nurse practitioner, and in that position will be key as well in terms of the whole concept of avoiding emergency department admissions. That person will play a key role. So we'll have to do that. So salaries increase as a result of the fact that we're now going to use more of the nursing direct care funding, and so the province is trying to get to 4 hours per resident per day of direct care funding. We should be there once we finish this final phase of hiring. That is not a requirement of individual homes. That's the provincial goal on average across the 630 homes in the province. So it's not a legislative requirement that Strathmere Lodge meet that goal. But obviously, it's something desired.
Sue?
Yeah, through the chair to Brent. I noticed under your supplies on, you don't have anything for fall prevention, so is that because whatever you do, I don't really know anything about nursing homes, but whatever you do to prevent it, you're already stocked up for the next couple of
Yeah,
years?
You have a one-page handout, and on the bottom of that, you'll see an actual specific pot of funding called minor capital equipment. It's something that the province targets to things like infection control, but that also includes falls prevention. So the ministry targets some money for falls prevention, and we buy things like bed alarms, chair alarms, and stuff to help us alert us when residents are attempting to mobilize when in fact they do require help. So it helps us to avoid falls in that way. So it's built into the nursing budget, and then we get funding to offset. In terms of just a few highlights, in terms of expenditures, we, as council will recall, we changed electronic health record software in early 2024, and we went to a product called Point Click Care. This is a software that about 96-97% of Ontario homes now have. So we moved to that software. There is a substantial cost increase to doing that. It's partly offset by, and again, I'm referring to your one-page handout under integrated technology. The province does fund for technology that includes helping to optimize medication safety, but part of our software can be expensed to that funding. It's recognized eligible expenditure for such. And our IT budget has gone up, which would be, I guess, under facility maintenance as a result of requirements around cyber insurance, requirements that has impacted the lodge in terms of what we need to do. So those are kind of the highlights as far as the significant.
Okay, can I see if everybody's got capital projects that are on listed are right on the next page?
Yep. Okay. So again, the capital request is less this year than the past few years. On it, we have boilers. Again, the lodge being 18 years old. We are serviced by boilers, and we have had to do some maintenance on particularly one of them this year. So planning to start looking at replacement there. We want to do some shower room upgrades. Each of the 5 resident home areas has what we call a spa with both shower facilities and tub facilities. So we do want to do some upgrades in the shower part of the spa. Elevator oil change. Doing some plumbing regarding domestic water mixing valve. And replacing a fridge, and doing metal cladding for windows. The windows at the lodge, the sills are done with brick and mortar, and the mortar is decaying and deteriorating, and housing wasp nests and that type of thing, and the potential, I guess, for leaking as well. So we want to do some cladding of the sills, and then some lift equipment for resident lifts and transfers as well.
Are those portable lifts that you can move
Yeah,
around?
yeah. Exactly, they're all on wheels, and a lot of residents require a lift and transfer as a percentage of our population.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you to Brent. The elevator oil replacement, isn't that mandated? There's a rule book with elevators and escalators and things. Is that
Yes,
discretionary? Is that
yeah,
discretionary?
we're subject to TSSA
Yeah,
inspections, et cetera, and it's been advised to
right.
to do the
Okay, I just wondered, I had this impression that this isn't exactly discretionary, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
Well, I think this isn't really saying it's capital projects, right?
yeah.
Changing the
Sometimes
oil is a
we-
capital project.
Yeah, okay.
the amount of money.
Yeah. Michelle, you also had a question.
Thank you. Just looking at the capital, I'm assuming that your asset management plan is informing you of
Yes,
some of these
yes, we do have that.
capitals, and I don't know, is that something that's on the website if we want to take a look at that?
I don't think it's on the website, but it's
Okay.
readily.
Yeah, so the comprehensive countywide asset management plan will be presented publicly and posted in January or February 2025. But Brent's team does an excellent job the old school way of tracking, and that'll be modernized here as we go forward. But they have an asset funding ratio over a 10-year period of 96%. So they're right in that indicative target area of 90 to 110%. So they really do an excellent job of tracking that. And the reason why some of those, I overheard it, some of those expenses that may be maintenance is because if you put it in capital, certain funding envelopes trigger from the launch there, and it's effective utilization of funds as Cindy and the team are always trying to do.
My next question was going to be, because I see that the ask for the county is going down, but then I know that we had that jump because of the roof replacement to this year. So then I went to take a look at the reserves. And do we have that information in terms of what reserve balances are?
Through the chair to the counselor, I did provide reserve funds to the clerk, so we'll make sure that maybe it's posted for Monday, for the conversation in the min, and then we go through the reserve.
I just wasn't sure, because if the ask for the county was less, and we had some room to maybe put some monies into reserves for future repairs, that type of thing, that could be something that we might want to consider.
Through the chair to the counselor, absolutely. I will point out as well, during the year, we, once in a while we talk about one-time funding. So Brent will receive a notice about one-time funding, and sometimes it is capital related. And we will have a discussion and say, is there anything else that can be funded? And we utilize any opportunity we can to take advantage of one-time funding from the province. So that also helps with the assets.
Sorry, I just have one question.
Go
Let's
ahead,
going back
go
to
ahead.
operating. The treasury charge, my question there is, do we allocate that so that it's subject to receiving some funding?
Through the chair to the counselor, yes. So we provide finance support to Brent and his team, and we also do payroll for Brent and his team, so.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Any other questions at this point? No? And so, thanks, Brent. There's so much that's non-discretionary, that's ruled by the province on this. There's that, what is it, 2% window that we have for that's discretionary. I have to say, I'm really glad we went ahead, that council decided to go ahead and do that route and do it. It's always better to delay it, doesn't help us any, because who knows what's
Doing
next.
it all at once was, I think, the right decision as well, as
Yeah.
opposed to trying
Yeah,
to spread it over multiple years.
agreed. I know I wouldn't do that at home, do half my race, so. But, yeah, that's, actually, it's a good report, and I look forward to hearing how easy or how tough it is to hire that staff need that you have coming, because I don't know, I think the government's going to have to make it free for them to take these health, for doing college and doing post-secondary education, they're gonna have to make it free to get people to go into it, I think. That's my own thoughts, but just.
Well, I
Sue?
think it's great to have this objective of the extra 4 hours per day, but the reality is if you're the staff, like, do that remains to be seen, I guess.
Wouldn't it be great to be able to spend more time with the people instead of having to be on the computer to talk about what you're doing? But I understand the need and the reason, but no, thank you. If there's nothing else, I'd ask for a mover for this report. Sue, Ina, all in favor? Sure, thank you. Thanks, Brian. So since Carrie gave me my glasses, I can't see anything. They moved to her again, I guess.
I can get her if you want to take a short recess.
Do you want to take a short break or you want to carry on?
We'll just we need to give care.
Yeah, we gotta give her a few
Take
minutes.
a 5-minute break since you.
Yeah, sounds
Yeah.
good, sounds good.
You gotta make a motion.
Do we need a motion for that? Ina and Michelle, all in favor? Carry.
I will go and tell Ms.
Yes.
All right, we're back in session. And before we get to the next one, we need a motion to allow Councilor Burkhart Jessen to ask questions here at the committee.
I'll move that.
Moved by Sue.
Sure.
Sure, seconded by Michelle. All in favor? All in favor?
Did
All
I
in
prove
favor?
myself yesterday?
All right, we're going to go forward with the economic development tourism and Tara, thank you. So, on the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marvin. So, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me to speak to regarding the budget for the economic department of Middlesex County. So, as you know, the department's main goal is to promote Middlesex County as an ideal place to establish and grow business while enjoying a high quality of life. The department's main objective is to nurture and attract private investment, thereby creating and maintaining job opportunities and increasing the property tax base. Visitor attraction is also carried out by this department, which acts as the destination marketing organization for the county. The Department of Economic Development serves 4 main functions in its role, supporting both the economic development and tourism development of the county. Those include research and information management, marketing and communications, business retention, and investment attraction. The department currently operates from 2 small leased office spaces located inside the Mocha Wellness Center at 1 Punch Lane. Economic development at the upper tier level is vital to the promotion and stability and growth, and to encouraging strong, cohesive lower tier municipalities and regional partnerships that contribute positively to the provincial, national, and global economy. The ultimate goal of economic development is to attract people and to draw, retain, and grow viable businesses. This goal requires extensive efforts to balance and maximize land, space, infrastructure, and assets together that shape the form and function of the community now and for many generations to come. Applicable legislation is laid out for you in your package, as well as many of the planned strategies and studies that have been developed over the course of the last years that still extend to the current day, or in this case, several that have been developed over the course of this last year as well that are informing the work that we're presenting today. For your information, all budget figures are rounded to the nearest dollar. The budget enhances current levels of service while still maintaining those that you are used to. The budget considers current demands and projections based on strategic action plans, known funding agreements, and consultant recommendations based on comparable municipal servicing levels. Budget figures generally contain assumptions based on historical precedent, and inflation and collective agreement provisions are also considered within. So, as you know, as economic development is not a mandated service, it is considered to be a discretionary service level. Pressures affecting economic development. I think that we are all very familiar with what is taking place in our community, and although it is an extreme positive in terms of the demographic shift that we are experiencing, it is also a pressure and a challenge to the provision of economic development services throughout our communities, and I think we all recognize that. So just in terms of laying it out for you so that you can see it in the chart form as we all see it around our communities, but certainly the realism of it is here today. The county, sitting at approximately 82,800, has seen a growth rate of 15.8%. Realized since 2016, and 6.1% of that has just taken place since 2021. And some of those figures, of course, are not seen. We have to dig very deep to get those figures because of the fact that we are often lumped in with the CMA of London. But we have been able to extrapolate and work with the province to be able to see these figures. So I think they're resonant. Population forecast at the current rate, as I'm sure you've had your presentation from planning as well. The realistic viewpoint is that we could be sitting at 100,000 of population in as little as 7 years. In terms of employment, I think it's very exciting to be able to bring this information to the forefront today, that in terms of Middlesex County, unlike many communities that we have seen across Canada, particularly in Ontario, we have not seen very many closures in the last few years. Employment, alongside that lack of closure, has also increased in every single one of our municipalities, which is extraordinary. That has been realized overall, about a 6% increase in jobs just in the last 2 years. And there's been no decrease in jobs in any one municipality in Middlesex County during that period. Each municipality in the county has also had an increase in job growth greater than the provincial average. At the same time, we have to look at labor force participation as well as an impact to what's happening in terms of economic growth. We can't just look at what's happening now, we have to look at the future. The prime age rate for population and labor force participation in that 25 to 54 categories, which is looked at in the London CMA, including most of Middlesex County, has grown by 13% since 2020, represents 42% of the total regional population. The population, that's a positive, but the population of those representing the next generation of workers, those in the 0 to 24 age range, represents a lower percentage of the total regional population at only 29%, and is experiencing a much slower rate of growth, only 6.1% over the same period. Therefore, the demand for workers in and around Middlesex County will put pressure on existing and new employers to compete for labor force. Workforce attraction will remain, therefore, a cornerstone of our economic development efforts and something that we need to also. I'm going to talk about this new concept of sort of the small and medium enterprise post-pandemic slump. So the true impact of the pandemic, and we talked about this last year at this table, will not be fully realized by these small and medium enterprises, which make up over 90% of Middlesex County, until this time. The reason for that is quite simple. There were many support programs put in place to assist companies to ensure that they could transition through the post-pandemic. But those supports are now realized and exhausted, and they will not be replenished. Extension of those programs as well in terms of loan programs has come to an end. Businesses that are unable to accommodate the assigned interest rates and repayment schedules are even further challenged by economic impacts. We're happy to see the reduction in the interest rate coming about, which will assist, but we really have not seen the ultimate result of what has transpired. To that end, business appreciation and programs that encourage the retention and expansion of existing commercial enterprise throughout Middlesex County will remain an integral component of any successful economic development effort. In terms of service demands, the Department of Economic Development works to meet the county's strategic objectives and provides all member municipalities with business appreciation, retention, and expansion efforts, domestic and foreign direct investment attraction, workforce attraction and development, sector development, including specific programming for manufacturing, agriculture, and of course, tourism. With the current staff complement of only 4 FTEs, a lack of dedicated office and meeting space to bring together industry and community partners, and a municipal structure that limits revenue generation and private sector partnerships, the department is challenged in meeting the growing economic needs of all member municipalities and industry, who often have limited internal resources to facilitate growth and innovation. In addition, the county must rely on partner agencies such as the Community Futures Development Corporation, the London Small Business Centre, and Community Employment Choices, each operating as nonprofit corporations funded by upper-tier government to provide support for entrepreneurial development and employment services that are integral to providing support for the private sector, both from a retention and attraction standpoint. Competitive industrial attraction and development. Upper tier government combined with aggressive municipal incentives and private-public partnerships have resulted in an estimated $15 million in new industrial development being announced in Ontario within a 2-hour radius of Middlesex County in the last 3 years alone. To remain competitive, Middlesex County must properly resource and empower its economic development service to use every tool available and to be innovative in its offerings of partnering efforts with industry in order to attract and secure investment. Also noted in here, we are exhausting our economic development strategic plan. The previous wardens and myself worked very diligently on this effort, and of course it was done right in the mix of the pandemic. So we've come to the end of that. The budget today internally includes a new economic development strategic plan to be provided in 2025. In terms of opportunities, there are,
Sorry, Anna, go
Yeah,
ahead.
we were, opportunities is kind of turning the page.
Yeah.
There's no comment here about the impact of the election in the United States, which is a pressure that, I mean, we're talking about it one JIB, we're talking about it in other boards. I know you can't predict anything, but just thought maybe you and your peers have been talking about this, potential impacts, or how you might react to it, or what your thoughts are on how we might move that, or, I mean,
yeah,
I think it's a big variable.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, we should put it in as a variable at the point that we submitted, but we didn't know the outcome of that when this went in. So it is something that we're watching. It is something that people are paying attention to. I can tell you that the last trade show I was at was just in the week that transpiring, and the opinions of those that have global investments were very contrary to the outcome of the election. And I've had some meetings since that time with global companies who are looking to invest and looking very closely at what is actually going to transpire in terms of maybe some of the promises made versus what actually will happen. I think there's a big question in terms of what the intention of the incumbent is going to do in terms of whether he will follow through with some of those promises or threats made. And that's going to present a potential great opportunity for Canada in terms of if there is follow through on some of those tariffs, and people are looking very closely at whether or not they need to at least form subsidiaries in Canada if they've already located in the US even, or whether or not they need to be accessing the US market via Canada. So depending on what tariffs are put in play, it certainly has an impact. There's no doubt about it. We're not sure what that final impact is going to be, but it's something that we will be watching, and it's something that our companies will be watching, both existing and new. And, you know, although we cannot control some of the higher things that are going to transpire, we certainly are going to see some of the impacts, but I think we're very well poised for investment should it be advantageous for European companies and the like to do business here.
Possibly, number.
Okay, Sue, I believe you had your hand up. No? Michelle, did you?
I did not.
I was waiting in the
Seeing
background.
things.
Wow, wait a minute.
That's
The ghost.
Oh, no, you're there.
That's a
Okay,
ghost.
sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
Thank you.
Opportunities for the department certainly maintain and strengthen our regional partnerships. And I want to assure you our department works extremely closely with a number of regional partnerships. And I don't want to name all of them because we could be here all day. But whether, you know, there are questions about whether we do business with our neighbors next door in terms of London Economic Development Corporation, the answer is yes. Whether we do business with the regional tourism corporations, whether we do things on the provincial and national level of economic development, the answer is yes. The opportunity exists for us to continue to foster those partnerships and to find other ways to be able to work together for the betterment of our communities. Some of those organizations, as you see in other areas, whether it be social services, for example, sometimes the funding flows through, the urban centers, and it makes it somewhat difficult. And this is not to say that they are not serving the county. It is to say that the resourcing that ends up in those organizations is not sufficient in order to be able to service both the urban and the more rural communities. And so we are challenged by that, and we are consistently having conversations with provincial and federal government to make sure that that is understood and known and see where opportunities lie. In terms of business expansion, I'm excited to say several Middlesex businesses across multiple sectors are undergoing or have planned expansions in 2024, 2025. A key component of continued investment by growing enterprises includes consistent availability and access to the county's economic development and tourism department and the expertise that the department holds. Opportunities in this vein include providing ongoing and timely consultation to aid lower tier municipal staff in the development and enhancement of local CIPs, official and strategic plans, implementation of business retention programs. It also includes relationship building among department staff and industry to identify needs and secure from both private and public sector at all levels. Support to access programs, partnership, and funding to encourage commercial and industrial expansion. Tourism was certainly one of the hardest hit industries of the COVID pandemic, but it continues to experience some of the fastest growth in the Middlesex London region. Tourism-related operations represent the top two fastest growing employment segments in our region. And the Department of Economic Development is the DMO for tourism, and Middlesex County plays a very important role in the promotion and development of that tourism enterprise investment. And so that is identified for you there in terms of looking at those fastest rates. Industrial land development, we've had many conversations about this, and I'm excited to see the efforts that we are placing into that, both at the county and the local level. Middlesex County offers considerable competitive advantage when it comes to industrial development. A prime location with direct 400 series highway access and proximity to both Canadian and US markets, Middlesex County currently has more than 100 parcels of zoned or potential employment lands as inventoried by the Economic Development Department in partnership with planning in all lower tier municipalities in 2023. These lands are, for the most part, however, underserviced, under private ownership, and inadequately marketed. There is a tremendous opportunity for Middlesex County to diversify its tax base. While several new industrial projects have been solidified in the past 3 years, and the growth of the industrial tax revenue in Middlesex County has shown year-over-year improvement since 2021. One long-standing automotive manufacturer closed their doors in 2024, and the county remains heavily reliant on its residential tax base, with less than 3% of the levy being generated through industrial tax. To date, in 2024, the Department of Economic Development has partnered with Global Affairs Canada to facilitate 38 one-on-one meetings with foreign direct investors interested in doing business in our county, and 190 one-on-one meetings with FDIs interested in doing business across the region in key sectors of the local economy. A fulsome and innovative approach to industrial land acquisition, development, and promotion is required to secure investment to capitalize on the industrial tax revenue for the sustainability of our communities. The County Loan Fund has been redeveloped to encourage and support growth-related infrastructure projects by local municipalities. Department of Economic Development has developed a FDI investment strategy and action report, in addition to a commercial investment attraction and a tourism investment toolkit, all in 2024. All of those developments have been done in partnership with upper tier government support. The opportunity has been previously presented to the county and deferred to 2025 to join the Southern Ontario Marketing Alliance, SOMA, to solidify the investment interests of the region resulting in access to lead generation far exceeding the capacity of the county currently. This unified front would serve the county well at this time of significant upper tier local government support for large scale industrial investment, and it is included in the budget. Funded projects. The Department of Economic Development has a long and successful history of special project development, funding acquisition, and implementation. Funding is secured through partnerships with local and regional stakeholders, as well as the provincial and federal government. 2025 projects include, but are not limited to, Middlesex County Foreign Direct Investment Attraction with Global Affairs, Middlesex County Commercial Investment Attraction in partnership with the Ministry of Rural Affairs. Additional funding proposals have been submitted to the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness to provide funding to pilot agri-food and agri-tech enterprises, and to Global Affairs for foreign direct investment in 2025-26, and to FedDev Ontario for a significant tourism development project in 2025-26. One of the things we will be talking about today in a separate budget that I'll be presenting, and I want to be clear that I'm presenting two very distinct budgets here today. One is not on top of the other. It is an either or approach. We will be presenting the internal budget, and then we will be separately presenting the budget, which would include the Economic Development Corporation. But to help address the identified pressures, as well as to more fully capitalize on opportunities outlined in this report, an extensive third-party consultation was conducted in 2024 to determine the best approach to the delivery of economic development services for the benefit of all Middlesex County-based municipalities, industry, and community stakeholders. The recommendation to formalize the Middlesex County EDC by utilizing the corporation established in 2018 was presented in the form of the Middlesex County Economic Development Strategic Strategy Report to Council on September 24th by Council resolution. An implementation plan and associated financial forecast have been prepared by staff and are being presented today as an addendum to Budget Committee for Council consideration for the 2025 budget. So I'm presenting now the internal budget for the Economic Development Service as it continues in its form as a department of Middlesex County. Within this, you will see there is a significant increase, and I'd like to address those increases that are most pertinent. First and foremost, there is an increase to salaries. The increase to salaries is respectful of a couple of things. One is that we've already been given notice that our economic development officer will be taking a couple of months off during the year. So we have supplemented that within the budget. In addition to that, as was recommended, we have increased the budget to a level that is more consistent with other municipal services throughout the region. We are still sitting on the low side of that, around $14 per capita. And that's based on the consultant's recommendations for resourcing, but also allows us the opportunity to increase our capacity. So it includes, in terms of salaries, an additional economic development officer. It also includes us transitioning to having a marketing person who can focus on the brands that we represent. So as you know, the department does a considerable amount of marketing and promotion. We do that on a number of brand levels. So we have Invest in Middlesex County, which is our economic development brand. We have Visit Middlesex County, which is all of our tourism promotion and development. We have also Work in Middlesex, which is our collaborative with our other stakeholders in employment and workforce development. And then additional to that, we do have some brands such as the From Our Hands to Your Table, which is specific to some projects. So that would allow us.
Sue has a question.
Through the chair, Karen. So you're just in your regular budget or requesting funding for 2 new positions,
Yes,
correct? Okay, thank you.
yes, that is correct. We also have consistently had a summer student in our department, and we have put in requests to increase that to 2 summer students over a 12-week term. One focused on economic development, one focused on tourism, and there are consistent opportunities that correspond with both of those opportunities through upper tier or upper level funding for us to look for some granting to support them.
Michelle and Kathy.
Kara, does the timing work on you said that there's an economic development officer that's gonna be out for 2 months. You're gonna be hiring a new individual anyway. Will the timing work to kind of cover that and then, but without having monies in the budget for just that 2-month leave? If you know what I mean.
Yes, so we have put that in to be an additional full-time, but we have put it into the internal budget that will actually come into play and provide us with the coverage that we need for that period of time, so that that person can get up to speed and also assist.
Okay, thank you.
But we do feel that the need is there for us to be able to adequately service all of the local municipality needs as well as industry needs and stakeholder needs with an additional economic development officer.
That's the question.
That was your question?
No further questions with respect to salaries. A couple of the other increases that I just wanted to make some notice of. You will see an increase in the line economic development services. This is where it includes our membership in SOMA, which is estimated at $30,000. Also included in economic development services, as you don't see the breakdown of that, is all of our agricultural strategy work, which we have submitted a couple of grant applications to assist with. Our BRE, business retention and expansion efforts, which are in partnership with the local municipalities. Community improvement supports, okay, so that's your reimbursement to the local municipalities with respect to implementation of their CIPs. I'm very excited to tell you at this point that we have actually capped out our CIP investment for 2024. Economic development meetings are included in that. As I said, investment attraction.
So where are you?
I am in economic development services. So the increase to that line item. This is also where we include all of our workforce projects, as well as investment readiness, which is quite of interest to the local municipalities at the current time as they are looking to efforts to ready their industrial land, as well as engage in the certification project for those lands that do come on site and are able to be brought up to speed with respect to infrastructure. There's a new line item that you'll see there that has, and I just want to let you know that it is contingent on funding. So the tourism growth fund line that you see there, that line, should it not be realized in terms of the grant, will not happen. So that particular increase, so that's.
So here or not?
Yes,
Yeah.
so we are waiting, so that does have an impact on what you're seeing in terms of increases to the budget. However, it is contingent on the answer we receive from FedDev.
Through the chair, just to be clear with the budget committee members. So you see in the grants that there is additional funding in the grant section of the revenue. And then what Kara's just pointed out on the expense, you see the offsetting additional expense. So if she doesn't get that grant, then both the grant funding and the expense will come out.
As well as any, there is, that particular program is a high level funding program, however, there is a little bit of money that would come from the county, but it's around 15% of the value of the total projects, okay? That one is an exciting project though, just so you know, in terms of what's included in that. It would be an overhaul to the tourism signage strategy throughout the county. So,
No more grassroots.
yes. The deputy CIO and I have had discussion regarding the need for an overhaul of that program, so that is included in there as well as looking at some major art installation projects and some other things that I think would be of considerable interest with respect to tourism.
What's the timing on any announcements with that, right?
Should be by March at the very latest. It also includes a project to the benefit of planning and forestry. Planning and forestry are looking at doing a considerable project with respect to signing and trail enhancements with respect to all of the county woodlots. And so we have the opportunity within this tourism, natural asset tourism piece to be able to look at funding that as well, just so you know that is included in that line item.
So is that working with the conservation authorities and all, and local municipalities and all that?
Yes, it's primarily focused on the county woodlots, Brian.
Oh, okay.
But there was a desire of planning and forestry to look at signing and enhancing all of those trails. And within the confines of this tourism fund, we were able to find that opportunity and propose it within. So we're hopeful that that will transpire within 2024.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I might be behind the class here. How much is the SOMA membership?
30,000.
3,000?
That's good, but
Yes.
They didn't see it under memberships.
No, it's included under foreign direct investment in the economic development services line. Yes. I know we've had some debate about whether it should be in memberships or whether it should be in that. The memberships that we pay to Ontario Food Cluster as well as to ONCA are also included in that line item and have been for many years.
On the SOMO question then, because I think we've talked over the years that with that there could be additional travel. So where is that then captured?
Yes. So the interesting thing about SOMA versus OFC and OMCA is that travel is actually reimbursed to those that participate in those shows on a per diem basis. So it ends up that you're paying the membership, but you will realize your travel expenses back for the most part. So you won't see the increase to the travel line.
But there still should be an in and an out, shouldn't there?
Well, I would have to do it.
Like,
yes,
or do you
No,
invoice?
there is. So I've actually included in the revenue line a per diem basis for the reimbursement of that. But in terms of the overall travel expected, it's not an increase in that. So for example, right now, SOMA is a member of OFC, okay? So the requirements of being, say, a member of OMCA or a member of OFC is that you have to attend at least one show a year. When you're a member of SOMA, you will automatically get a membership in OFC because SOMA actually pays membership in OFC. So there's an offset of that. There's also an offset of the fact that there will be some reduction in terms of the necessity for us to attend all shows. We will still realize all of the benefits of membership without having Middlesex County have to be the one that attends that show in order to realize it.
Okay, so if you go,
Yes.
who initially pays for it? Do you do the outlay and then you get reimbursed?
Yes.
So that should be captured somewhere.
Yes, but you're still not going to, it's still not, I don't see it as an overall increase to the level that we are participating now versus the level we will participate.
Are we a member now in the OFC?
Yes,
And what do we pay for that?
$4,000.
And we should, because we are online, we should say what OFC is and SOMA is.
Yeah.
I think I know if I was listening to this, I'm hearing OFC, SOMA, and you know what they are.
Absolutely. So OFC stands for Ontario Food Cluster. That's an organization which Middlesex County has served as co-chair and treasurer for the last 4 years. We're transitioning that to another municipality. That particular group now has 17 members, soon to go to 18 as we had a vote yesterday. It also includes membership paid by the Ontario Ministry of Agribusiness as well. So I think that's exciting to note. It's a partnership as well with the federal level of agri-food. That is supported, generally speaking, by way of grant applications to CanExport every year for the purpose of doing foreign direct investments for those member organizations or municipalities, particular to agri-food and agri-tech. OMCA is the Ontario Manufacturing Communities Alliance. That group does a similar role, however, it is very particular to manufacturing pursuits for the members that are involved in that. We've been a member of that for the last few years, and the membership to that is $5,000. SOMA, as we said, is the Southern Ontario Marketing Alliance. That is a much smaller group with regional partners from distinctly in our area. St. Thomas, for example, is a member of that group along with Woodstock. And that group looks at all pursuits for investment. I would say when comparing them to OMCA or comparing them to OFC, they will at this time be structured to be looking at automotive, EV, those types of pursuits. However, they are involved in all pursuits for the benefit of their select members, but it is a much smaller group of approximately 5.
I just thought that's something we should be.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Question?
No, I'm just
Oh,
pondering.
okay, I know you're pondering, I just wondered if you had it.
Everybody feels it.
Yeah, and then the other thing that we have discussed, which is included in this budget, is $65,000 for the development of a new economic development strategic plan. So that is a one-time fee for usually a 5-year period. We do see that in the internal budget. Other major change is office space. I'm looking at a dedicated office space for the department.
So,
Go ahead.
yeah, so I put the circle around that when I was reading last night is, I'm curious, would there, just purely from a dollars and cents, is there a reason why you couldn't be at this building? Or at the new building, once it's built?
Well, I know that space has not been afforded to the Economic Development Department in the new building. And space here was not consistent with the level of staffing that we had, but we transitioned out to diversify the efforts of the county and to provide service in the county. I think it is exceptionally important that economic development and tourism be provided in the county and not here from the city. It does create a bit of a confusion and a misnomer with industry and our stakeholders if we are promoting servicing from the city of London. So it's very, very important that we be in the county to provide that service and to represent our communities. Currently, the office space, of course, we transitioned into it during COVID, and it met requirements at that time in terms of having people work from home on a rotating basis, but it is simply not sufficient. We do have a considerable amount of material that is of interest to the community and to industry. We also require storage, which is not afforded to us in the current model. And we would like to be together and to be able to provide a professional service where we can invite people in to our offices, have those meetings and have other opportunities to promote our service.
So where I can't find where's the line of the cost of that rental assistance?
It'll be under operations.
Under operations?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, yep. That's what it is now, and that's what you're expecting it to be for 25,
This is correct.
from
Yes.
6,000 to 39?
I'm looking at 103.
Oh, where's that? Wait,
If I got it right, that you're,
103, 141.
yeah, that's what I.
that's total operations.
That's total
Yeah, but it's
operations.
very
That
So that
includes-
it's on this one, but
Oh, it's broken out
it's
here
on
in the
number
operations.
4,
Yeah.
Sue, on the 4, it breaks it down, and it's the last line item where it says rental. I'm assuming that's what,
39,000.
39, right?
Yes. And I have based that on market rates and just, just pulling some market.
That's
rates.
part of the 103.
So
Yes, it's part of
That is
it.
part of it,
Yeah.
but it's like
It's in there.
40,000.
is everyone working in the office now?
I am not working in the office.
No, everyone
there.
else though is working out of the office?
They are, but only on a rotating basis. We
Oh, on
have
a
one
rotating.
person that attends full-time in that office. The rest of them share desk space and rotate.
Have you been in that office? It's kind of like a room closet. Sorry, no offense.
They
Sounds
call
like-
it the gym, so no offense.
But you do have access to a board view.
There's no, well, there's only the library room, which right now is not very accessible, right? Because we have Middlesex Center staff working out of the wellness center as well this past year, so.
Where would the new space be?
That would be determined.
Okay, so it's not
That
determined.
would not be,
So this
yes,
is
that is
strictly an
not been
estimate on
determined, this is
square
an
footage.
estimate, a market rate based on square footage that I feel would be reasonable. And I think in the best interest of the community, it would probably be in the best interest of the county to do a call out and ask for some proposals with respect to space.
So you're changing the model for working then? I mean, yeah.
Yes,
It's kind of implied in my mind from what you're saying, but I
Yes.
thought I better ask.
yes.
Michelle,
Just wondered, whose decision was it not to include economic development in the big bill?
I'm not the decision maker with respect to that.
I mean, I can respond to that generally
go
through the chair. I mean, we're talking about a new building being quite lean as far as space. There are provisions within the new building for hoteling space, so care or staff want to hold a meeting at the county building or need an office space to do work. There is a potential for them to provide those services at the new building. Across many departments, there's not a space for any county engineering employees in the building. There's not space for the Frank Library employees in the building. Many city staff are all in hoteling spaces, so they will come in and out as necessary to work in the office, but to provide services across the county. I know it's been Bill's direction, and I support it as well, to have a distribution of service directly out to our county communities. That's why we've invested quite heavily in our comprehensive library locations to be able to provide those services. I agree with what Kara said. The provision of economic development directly out into the county really is a priority that we should be looking at. So we haven't created a space, a permanent space, from an administrative point of view for those services to be provided out of our potential new administration building in South London. We can get into more detail about that whole building itself as part of the administration budget discussions, but that was a direction that we've had and have provided that through the new county administration building working group. 3 members of this committee, well, 2 members of this committee, 1 former member of this committee are part of. We are trying to right-size the building for the modern work environment, which is promoting virtual work, remote work, mixed with hoteling space at our office.
No, I don't disagree with the decentralization, it's just, for the library space, at least there's space set for staff, it's just economic development, there just doesn't seem to be that identified space, that's an extra cost.
I will note that in a very recent revision to the building, we have included some below grade space. We do have much more storage space than we additionally anticipated being able to provide in the county building. So if there was a need for some material to be stored from an economic development perspective, promotional materials, those sorts of things, we certainly would have space in the building for that type of storage. And again, we have, I can't think of the total number. There's a number of different size meeting rooms that would be easily facilitated for meetings between 2 to 4 people to 100 at our new county administration center that would, be helpful for CARE to either have an event or bring in a small group of investors to be able to show them off from location close to the 401, so easy to access, but then be able to provide that direct connection out to other areas of the county as well. So.
I just, maybe this is more of a closed session question, is, without naming a street and address, like, do you have a geographical area where you think you wanna be located? No. Okay.
I think it's preliminary to say that. I think that, as to my earlier point, I think it would be best suited for the county to get proposals. I think it's an important service that is of considerable interest to industry and stakeholders. And I think there is interest of certain stakeholders as well to co-locate. I've certainly heard that. And I think that provides us with some opportunity. And I think it would be in the best interest of the county to get some proposals to see what's out there and who would want us to be there.
Any other questions on this?
So your salary benefits, the compensation are gonna be stated in there.
Yes. And all salary and benefit information is provided by Treasury on the basis of that. Yes.
So the biggest impact on the budget is two more people
Yes.
and change in the rental costs and locations and that,
And so on.
and some.
Yep.
There's no other questions? Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think
That's
we're
what this
okay with respect to the internal budget.
It's like anything else, when we do this, it's the first time through things. And I know we've asked people to come back and to review stuff, so.
Yeah, I'm being careful to try to wear the hat of governance rather than dipping below the line of operations, because we have a million questions,
Right.
there's probably not appropriate here. So,
Well, if you already identified that, probably they're not. But if there's no other questions at this time, nothing to add, we need a motion to accept this. Michelle?
I'll receive it.
To receive.
Sorry, Anna, in favor? Carrie, thanks. Thanks, and you
Accept it for
have now
information.
the implementation strategy
Yes, I do.
for the establishment of the Economic Development Corporation.
Jake, we have just another quick break. So you
Yes.
just ask,
Yes, we need a motion to go for a short break. Michelle, Sue, in favor? Carrie. Okay, thanks. following up here. All right, we're back in open session again. And implementation strategy for the establishment of an economic development corporation business case.
Yes.
Kara.
Thank you, Warren. We are presenting today a very different approach to the delivery of economic development in Middlesex County. County of Middlesex County, as we know, is poised to enhance its economic landscape through the establishment of an economic development corporation. This initiative aims to stimulate economic growth, attract investment, create jobs, and improve the overall value proposition for commercial and industrial investment, visitors, and residents. The EDC will serve as a catalyst for greater collaboration between public and private sectors, fostering an environment conducive to sustainable development. Middlesex County has experienced, as we know, both opportunities and challenges in its economic development journey. With a diverse economy and a strategic location, the county has the potential to become a regional hub for business and innovation. However, to fully realize this potential, a structured approach to economic development is necessary. Recognizing that the Middlesex County Economic Development Strategic Plan that was compiled in the midst of COVID pandemic would expire in 2025, Middlesex County took the initiative to undertake a comprehensive review, best practice, and competitive analysis of its economic development and service delivery in 2024. The result of this was concluded in the recommendations delivered in the Middlesex County Economic Development Corporation strategy that was considered by Middlesex County Council at the meeting of September the 24th, and at which Council passed the following motions. A Middlesex County Economic Development Corporation strategy presented be received for information, and that County Council direct staff to bring forward a Middlesex County Economic Development Corporation implementation strategy during the 2025 budget deliberation for council consideration. And so that's what we're here to do today. The objectives of this are to better diversify, therefore, or increase the tax base of the County of Middlesex, to attract and retain businesses in the County of Middlesex, to create and retain jobs for residents, to promote sustainable economic development and growth, to enhance the county's competitiveness in attracting investment, and to foster collaboration among key partners, including all levels of government, businesses, and community organizations. We have reviewed some of the information that is being presented when we were presenting the internal budget, but for the sake of all those watching and here today, there's a marked opportunity for Middlesex County to diversify its tax base. While several new industrial projects have been solidified in the past 3 years, and growth of the industrial tax revenue of Middlesex County has shown year-over-year improvement since 2021, one long-standing automotive manufacturer closed its stores in 2024, and the county remains heavily reliant on its residential tax base, with less than 3% of the levy being generated through industrial tax. Middlesex County has a diverse economy with key industries including agriculture, advanced manufacturing, tourism, and services. The agricultural sector is significantly due to the county's rural landscape, while manufacturing plays a crucial role in providing employment and economic stability. The service sector, including healthcare and education, has been growing, reflecting broader trends in urbanization and population growth. Tourism is the fastest growing sector in London Middlesex region and is a key focus for investment attraction. Middlesex County has experienced few business closures, and employment has consistently increased to serve both existing and new companies choosing to do business here. From 2022 to 2024, as we have expressed, Middlesex County experienced a 6% increase in jobs. There is no decrease in jobs in any municipality during this period in the county, and each municipality had an increase in job growth greater than the provincial average. As noted, however, labor force participation rates in Ontario have remained steady with less than a 0.5 variation. And while the prime age for labor force participation in the London CMA has grown by 13%, the population of those representing the next generation of workers represents a lower percentage and has experienced much slower growth. Middlesex County has experienced significant population growth driven by natural growth and migration. The demographic profile of Middlesex County indicates an engaged and stable workforce. However, the demand for workers in and around Middlesex County due to many of the investments that we are noticed by is going to put pressure on existing and new employers to compete for labor. Workforce attraction will therefore remain an important component for economic development. The attraction of younger families to the area will be of particular importance to provide succession for the aging workforce. Demographic shifts, as we know, are impacting all service areas, including housing demand, infrastructure, inter-community, and local services. Many of which we're going to talk about as we go on today. Opportunities for growth. Middlesex County offers a variety of commercial and industrial opportunities due to its strategic location, access to transportation networks, and diverse economy. The county is well positioned near major urban centers such as London, which can attract businesses looking for proximity to larger markets. Key investment opportunities include agriculture and agri-food, manufacturing, logistics and distribution, renewable energy, commercial development, and tourism and recreation enterprise. A couple of notable projects that we have participated in and concluded in 2024 include the Middlesex County Tourism Investment Toolkit, as well as a commercial investment attraction action plan. Limitations to the current economic development service delivery model. So Middlesex County offers a variety of commercial and industrial opportunities. County is well positioned, as noted, but the current service delivery model offers a lack of coordinated service. Without a centralized economic development body, municipalities can struggle to present a unified front to attract businesses, leading to missed opportunities. Resource limitations. Local municipalities can lack the resources and expertise needed to effectively promote their unique assets and attract investment. Municipal governments are limited in the funding that they can both access and distribute. Competition for investment. Neighboring areas with well-established economic development corporations can have more robust marketing strategies and incentives, making it harder for Middlesex County to compete. Tailored support. Each municipality and industry has unique needs and values, and without a dedicated organization, it can be challenging to provide tailored support. Networking and collaboration. The absence of a central body can hinder networking opportunities among businesses and between municipalities, limiting collaboration that could drive economic growth. Addressing these challenges through the establishment of the EDC will help the municipalities in Middlesex County better leverage opportunities and enhance competitiveness across the region. We talked about the tax rate. It remains one of the lowest in Southwestern Ontario, and therefore more attractive rates for investment. The heavy reliance of Middlesex County on residential taxation, however, puts member local municipalities at a disadvantage when compared to the realization of commercial and industrial taxation by neighboring municipalities. With respect to the proposed structure of the EDC, the Middlesex County EDC was actually established by council in 2018. The corporation was set up broadly to allow for the delivery of any economic development service permitted under the Municipal Act of 2021 and its regulations. There has been no amendment to the Act since the EDC was registered, making letters of incorporation still relevant. Base operational funding of the EDC to ensure the sustainability of its efforts would be provided on a predetermined per capita funding model consistent with other municipally funded EDCs in Southwestern Ontario. Additional revenue will be garnered through external funding sources, including government grants or sector-specific and ongoing projects, as well as partnerships with local stakeholder groups, workshops, and consulting services using the expertise of the EDC. In addition to carrying out the core functions of the Economic Development Service for Middlesex County and its member municipalities, The EDC will leverage additional programming to offer new programs and support local industry, such as workforce development initiatives and small business programming. This may be accomplished in partnership with other levels of government through nonprofit-related funding, fee-for-service, or social enterprise. As we move forward and look at the financial analysis of the case, I think it's very, very important that we recognize one key factor, and that is that the budget being presented replaces the internal budget. It is not an add-on or addendum to. It would be a complete overhaul of the department and a transition. So one budget does not impact the other. They are standalone in their own right. The phases of implementation of this plan include year one, which includes a 9-month phased-in approach. So in this approach, the department remains within the county of Middlesex and operates as is through the transitional phase. And it is around the 9-month mark where we actually transition to the EDC. So that is built into the budget. Okay.
And that steering committee you speak of there, that I imagine you might get some pushback around the circle because who's going to be on it and what areas are represented. So
the steering committee would be chosen by county
council.
Yes, yes, as was the case when we established the Community Futures Development Corporation in the early 2000s as well. So it's very, very important. The county council is the determinant of who the steering committee is, so that they feel that the expertise that is necessary is on that committee, and also it is representative of county council wishes. So that's very, very important. Rather than an economic development strategic plan that would be consistent with delivery under an internal department, we instead would be compiling a business plan. So we would be taking the recommendations that were brought forward during the strategic plan that was done by the consultants with respect to an EDC. We would transition that into a business plan.
So would you still need the $65,000?
No, it is a different, no, it's a very lower amount, looking at simply review of the business plan. Okay. So that reduces that line item. You won't see an overall reduction in budget really, but that's because this is a different model. But that particular line item is reduced. Okay. Governance and bylaws will be confirmed. Again, there is a minor accordance included in the budget for legal fees for ensuring that those bylaws are in line. However, I have had a conversation with legal, and we do not anticipate that to be a very costly process. Key personnel would be hired and transitioned. Physical space would be secured. So there is the inclusion, similar to the internal budget, of a standalone office for this corporation to operate from.
So how many extra people over and above?
It's exactly the same. Yes, yeah.
So
So,
we need to hire?
so for the most part, the budget mimics the internal budget. However, the transition takes place around the 9-month mark. And instead of a strategic plan for internal, it's a business plan. There's just some modest changes, but
Does your existing team have the skill set to deliver this model?
yes, they do. And in addition to that are the added skill sets that we've required in both.
But you're not hiring?
Yes, I would be hiring the same complement as we would be hiring in the internal.
And we'll be seeing that on the line items.
Yes, yes,
Going
the
forward.
salary for the most part is fairly consistent. Yeah. Okay. The only differences are timing. Phase 2 of the approach, obviously, years 2 and 3 are really launching targeted programs to support local businesses and attract new investments. We've had several conversations to that like that may be afforded in an EDC model that would maybe not otherwise be afforded. Extensive marketing and partnership building, and establishing key performance indicators. It's a really important part of looking at the EDC model. Not that it's not important of the internal model, we certainly would be establishing those within the confines of the economic development strategic plan. If we're internal, but if we're external, it's really important for us to get established and then look at what key performance indicators are necessitated, not only by industry and stakeholders, but most importantly by our principal funder, that being the county funds. Phase 3 is looking at evaluation and growth of the organization, looking at the return of investment of the EDC's initiatives based on the corporate objectives and those of the KPIs and of the county, and refining the business plan strategies based on feedback and outcomes. A 3-year forecast, an annual forecast, including operational cost, program funding, and anticipated revenue has been prepared. Again, a more formalized budget process would be undertaken as part of the business planning process. And the format establishment of the Economic Development Corporation represents a strong strategic investment in the economic health of the community by fostering economic growth, creating and retaining jobs, and enhancing the quality of life for residents through the attraction of investment. The EDC will play a vital role in shaping the prosperous and sustainable future of the county. So again, I just want to reiterate the fact that this budget being proposed is a standalone budget. It has no impact on the internal budget. It would replace the internal budget if this is the desire of council to move forward with the formation of the EDC. You will see the difference. One of the stark differences I think that you will recognize is that we have actually, for the purposes of this budgetary process and presenting a 3-year held study, the county contribution. So that contribution, again, similar to the internal model, however, it will flux according to the internal model. It wouldn't be a set rate. It is what it is from year to year with respect to funding when you have an internal model. I would propose that there be an agreement between the EDC and the corporation for a funding model to be set for a 3-year period. That would hold steady the county's contribution and put the auspices on the EDC to generate additional revenue over and above that to supplement its programming. I think that's important, one, from a KPI standpoint and to solidify the need and solidify the objectives of the EDC, but it's also an opportunity, and I've had this conversation with several of you. What is the difference between operating as an internal department versus operating as an EDC? One is the reputation with industry and stakeholders in terms of not operating specifically with governments at all times, operating with an objective organization that includes the interests of both industry, the private sector, and government. I think that's important when you're dealing with private sector investment lots of times. That's important to them. The other thing that's really important is the opportunity that having a nonprofit corporation established allows you with respect to funding opportunities. So there are certain things that can be afforded or can be desired and can be attracted from a funding model in a nonprofit corporation than they can be under the traditional municipal act and municipal offering. So there is that difference. Does it put pressure on the EDC? Does it put pressure on, the staffing? Yes, it does. It puts pressure on the board. It puts pressure on the staff to be able to generate over and above what the county can provide. But I think that's very important. I think it's important for an EDC to be able to go out into the community and talk to its stakeholders and build partnerships that it otherwise might not be able to do. I think that's one of the key advantages, but one of the key challenges as well. But anytime that you're going to look at a corporate model, that is one of the things that is very important to be inherent in the model. So we've held that study. We've also included in this budget, as I said, a 9-month implementation period because it does take time. You want to make sure that you're doing things right. You want to make sure that you have the right people at the table. You want to make sure that the county interests are always held foremost as being the most important, as the principal funder of the model, as is in most of the other models that you see around. Office space is included in here, but again, it's within that transitional period. And again, I would recommend the same thing that we've talked about before, is that proposals would be sought as to where the best interest of the EDC would lie in terms of forming its office and inviting in private sector partnership to do so. I think that you'll see a trend obviously taking place, and you may have seen announcements recently of EDCs or economic development services having standalone office space. It is one of those things that is generally desired in terms of not only the complication with Middlesex County having its headquarters in the city of London, but also the inherent privacy and confidentiality that sometimes has to be inherent in the conversations that we have. And where we conduct that business, and we have site selectors or other investors coming into the community that may be interested. It is a bit of a misnomer at times for us to invite them into any type of particular municipal space. So we do have that challenge as well, and it's one of the things that we have to be conscious of. So other things that we've talked about in the internal budget remain steady in here. There is also the membership in SOMA included in here. And so
what's the per diems for SOMA?
it's 500 per day.
And you're paying that to someone?
That would come back into the corporation. Yeah, so we pay the membership, they pay back in. That's included.
Michelle.
Councillor Burkhardt Justin's point earlier helps to offset some of those travel costs.
Go ahead, Michelle.
A lot of information here.
Yes.
So interesting enough, I didn't know that we were already a corporation. I didn't realize that. So, so just to kind of pick up where you left off in terms of advantages then to that, the only reason why we haven't been getting the funding is because we're still a government entity in essence. Like, so what you're saying is when this corporation is established, I guess more formally with the committee, then we're not that government entity, and then we would be able to access more funding dollars.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, that is the estimation that we would be able to do that. So we have not been running the corporation, right? The corporation exists on paper. The structure of the corporation does need to be changed, obviously, with respect to there's no board of directors that's been established or anything like that, and the corporation has not been operating as such. When it does, or if it does, at that point, there is the affordability of going after additional funding sources that would not otherwise be realized in a municipal model, right? We have certain constraints as a municipality, and looking at the Municipal Act. I'll give you an example. I can give you an example of one whereby Cindy and I just got notice yesterday of a grants application that we made to the provincial government to establish a pilot program which would actually provide startup funding to agri-food businesses. This was a desire of the province that was presented to us, but given our status, we're not able to be able to realize that, and we received that notice yesterday. In an economic development corporation model, once you have brought in funding from the municipal model, it then becomes part of the economic development corporation and now belongs to the nonprofit organization. That nonprofit organization can isolate those funds for a particular use and say, we're now going to access provincial funding or federal dollars on the other side, but we're going to hold those funds for this intended purpose that maybe otherwise a municipality could not, right? So there are some constraints within the Municipal Act. And we found similar situations when we were operating the Community Futures Corporation.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so when we're talking about constraints, obviously the municipal act prohibits us from bonusing or providing
Yes.
incentives. You're indicating that with the corporation, that can happen? Is that correct?
Nonprofit organization that is not privy to the same municipal law.
Good for thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Go ahead. You got another, Michelle?
Sorry, just have one. So Kara, what if, and I'm just kind of posing this question. Is there a downfall to completing the business plan even before we create the more formal corporation?
I think the down on is just resourcing, right? So if you're not going to travel down that road, it would be lots of resources that would be devoted to that.
Unless it was contracted out to another party to do that.
Yes, but it would still be lots of resources.
Okay, yeah,
But
sorry.
you're,
Yeah,
you're,
that's that
you're
question.
from a 10,000 feet above the earth, you're still gonna need a strat plan going forward, whether you go with the existing model or the other, because you've already reached the lifespan in your existing. Like the 20, is it up to 2024?
It's 2025.
So
But that's what the business plan would reduce
Right.
this stuff.
Yes.
that's what he is.
Oh.
Business plan was just completed, essentially. The business plan was just essentially like the work that we did that was presented to council. That's gonna be,
It will transition.
it will
that way.
transition into
Yes.
the business plan.
And then, of course, in a business plan model with a corporation, you are going to be reviewing that business plan.
Yeah.
Right, on an annual basis. It's a little bit different than the economic development strategic plan that's inherent usually in internal departments.
Cindy.
Thanks, through the warden to the budget committee members. Kara, I just have a question as I'm looking at all of the expenditures. I'm just curious around support services. So for the county currently, information technology supports you. My department in finance supports you, the clerk's department supports you, et cetera. So is that built into this model as well?
There isn't a cost built into that model because those costs are unknown. So that would definitely be worked into the business plan and a more extensive business plan because we haven't had those conversations with respect to cost. It is one of the things that is often shared between an economic development corporation and its municipal funder. Some are not done at cost and some are. And so those conversations will still need to be delved into.
So just to be clear, Middlesex County contribution operating 1.2 plus, or that is inclusive of?
It's not inclusive of those services, but again, a service agreement would need to be discussed.
And those would be line items below that
Yes,
for this,
Yeah.
okay, so.
yeah. They could be an in-kind contribution or they could be a monetary contribution back from, yeah. So we
So
have had those.
is your question like the 1.2 plus the
asking-
1.5?
Yeah, I'm asking, what are we on the hook for here?
Right, that's
That's
what I
what-
I wanna hear clarity kind of on that.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
I wanna make sure I have it clear.
We have based it on the 1.2, around 14.65 per capita, which is still exceptionally low when you look at what's happening out in the community. If you look back at the presentation that was done by the Economic Development Strategic Consultants, you will see us in line with some of those other parties, but those other parties do not deliver tourism services. So that's just on the basis of their economic development service. So yes, so minor variations to the budget based on that. Obviously, the corporation would have the ability to also look at other service models in terms of whether it be IT, whether it be treasury. There is a line item included in there for auditing services. There is a small line item in there for legal services, just on the basis of the establishment of the corporation, but IT services. There is a built-in with respect to, you know, software, there's a built-in with respect to hardware, there's a built-in with respect to web design services. I'll give you an example as well. Currently, the web design and web development services are quite high for Middlesex County based on the agreements that we have in place. And Economic Development Corporation's board may dictate that it look to other delivery models, and that may provide us with an offset as well for some of the other things that may have to be ebbed and flowed. But again, we would certainly be going through a very exhaustive financial process, but for the purposes of the committee, I thought it important to show that the responsibility will lie in the Economic Development Corporation, and a set agreement will be placed between the Corporation of the County of Middlesex and the Economic Development Corporation to set funding at a particular level. And it will be the responsibility of the EDC to generate additional funding.
So just on kind of jumping off what Cindy asked and understanding it's a this or a that.
Yes.
Okay, but I am looking at the internal model. So your ask from the county in the internal model is 1.23. And right now on the external, the standalone, it is slightly lower than that. So my question then to Cindy is those supports that we offer the department, where does that show? So where does the cost of IT show up? Where does your costs show up on the internal? Would that be the difference between the $2? Like
Through the chair to the budget, to the budget committee and members. That is in each person's department. So it is county cost. So if you're looking at information technology, it would be in the information technology budget, and we support
okay,
the
gotcha.
county.
Okay.
Same with the finance. As you heard recently with the lodge, there is some departments where there is extra funding provided by the province that we are able to utilize finance, payroll, or other costs. But in the case of economic development, it's just a part of the corporation.
Okay.
County
So
Middlesex.
is that quantified somewhere? Or it's just the cost of us doing the business within the departments that we offer?
Through the chair.
Like
to
aside
the
from,
counselor, it would have to be determined because this is a new business. It is a new business model with new legislation. So we could calculate that. We could determine what
but you
that
don't do
is,
that now. That's
but
my
I don't
question.
have
You
that right now.
don't do, so you don't know how much of your supports are put towards the ECDAP department now.
Currently, I don't have exact detail on that, no.
But it is listed within other budgets, correct? The cost,
It's
like
just the
through the
cost
IT
of-
budget.
Just the cost of
Through-
county of Middlesex business.
So we don't do cost and management accounting per department
Right.
at the county. So, I mean,
With the
companies
exception.
do that for special projects. If you work in private industry, it'll be costed out because there's, opportunity costs and all those other things to consider.
Well, not exactly, Brian, because she said all departments. She said at the county. I would say that that's not the case for MLPS. I mean, it's divided out for obvious reasons. It's also not the case for other things where there's a non-levy component. So you'd have to do that as well. So it's done in all those cases. So all the county wouldn't be the right answer, but generally at the county, I think would be the right answer that Ina was talking about.
Okay.
So it's clearly necessary for certain
Right.
services.
Sue.
Through Brian to Kara, some of these categories are kind of general, and I'm sure you can speak to the specifics of each one. But I'm just curious if in any of these numbers, there's any consideration given to provide support or dollars to the lower tier municipalities that would be benefiting from this corporation for feasibility studies to get them to the next point. Like I'm looking at workforce and agricultural projects, so I look at that and say, oh, okay, so in a municipality that has agricultural opportunity, is there $10,000 that could go towards, I'm making this up, but towards a feasibility study? Or does that come under, or would that come under investment strategy implementation to get it implemented? Is there part of that, or that maybe trying to read too much into this? So that's my first question. And my second question is industrial lands readiness and certification. What is it, are you able to break that number down to say for $40,000 in 2025, the cost per project or per property or unit or whatever to get that industrial land certified? Like what is it like getting probate, it's $3,900 in engagement, it doesn't matter what the size of the estate is, or, you know what I mean? So,
Sure.
yeah.
Sure.
So those
Through
are
the
the
chair.
questions.
To the committee member. So most of the programs that you see listed out here are programs that are already included in the internal budget of the county of Middlesex with respect to economic development services. And in the interest of the county as a whole, we do not set aside any funding particular to any local municipality. What we do is we create programs whereby there is an equal opportunity for all local municipalities to partner with us on that project. So for example, in the case of investment readiness and certification, not all local municipalities will be in a position within 2025 to be able to access that program by nature of the work that they are doing. We may have one municipality who has already done the work in terms of putting pipes in the ground and infrastructure to ready an industrial park, and it's at the point of being able to access a provincial program, for example, for certification. So this has been the case in 3 different situations with different business parks that have been very successful in Middlesex County. And in those cases, when that municipality is ready, they will partner with the county to access funding for that purpose. It is always on a reimbursement type of situation. It is always done in partnership with the province with respect to investment readiness and certification. In another line item, which I think is a good example, is community improvement planning. So as you know, for many years, the county has been encouraging our local municipalities to engage in community improvement planning. And for those that have been in that particular realm for many years, we have encouraged those municipalities to revamp their community improvement plans to offer the best type of incentive, particular to the market readiness and needs of that municipality at any one time. And so we've engaged in that process. So one municipality may be at the point of developing their CIP, in which case we have partnered with them to develop that. Whereas another municipality is been having a CIP in place for 10 years. They revamped it many years ago. They're in full implementation mode, and therefore our partnership with them is a bit different in terms of actually fostering the implementation and providing the reimbursement to their funds so that they're able to do that, because as you know, under the Municipal Act, we are not able to do any direct incentives. So we work with our municipalities as partners and provide that benefit to them. So all of these programs, as they are set out, do not have a set amount within them for any one particular project, because all projects may be a little bit different. Sometimes there will be a maximum that will be established within a particular fund. For example, tourism sponsorship, okay? If we're gonna work together with an operator, that might be a local municipality, or that might be an independent private operator that's looking at festivals and events or things that they want to do to generate visitation into the community. We will set some certain parameters within that programming so that any one is not benefiting considerably greater than the other. But with respect to CFP, you usually have some limitations set within your own local municipalities within the maximums, and we afford a percentage of that. With an economic development corporation model, there exists a tremendous opportunity to work additionally with local municipalities over and above the base level that we are able to do with county funding, to say, all right, in Adelaide Metcalf right now, there is a particular project of interest that they would like to advance. We may be able, in an economic development corporation model, to bring in additional resources to help you with that project on an interim basis, so that you are not left trying to manage that at the local level. The EDC may partner with Adelaide Metcalf, for example, and say, hey, you know, you're looking at this particular industrial land, or you're looking at this particular project. We're gonna be able to bring in additional resources over and above that being funded by the county to assist you with that project on a partnership basis. We could do that with any one municipality. We could do that with stakeholder groups. There's a number of opportunities that are afforded in that regard. But is there a fund in here right now for feasibility for, I'm assuming for industrial land? No, there is not. The investment readiness and certification program, because that is a partnership with the province, it has set requirements. It's not usually feasibility that is funded within that. It is usually archaeological studies, environmental studies, and the like to ready that land. And then it moves from certification to actually implementation and marketing, and the province now has a program as well that they partner on, which allows for the marketing of that land once it is considered certified or investment ready.
So follow up,
Yes.
so, sorry, I don't understand. So in 2025, for $40,000, how many parcels can you get certified for $40,000?
Through you, Chair, to council member, we couldn't determine that because we don't know the cost in advance of the particular studies that would have to be undertaken. So
how is 40 reasonable then? Like, what if you get a?
it has been reasonable to date to have the levels of support that we have in place, but we are not able to predict what would come forward without someone declaring it.
Yeah, so my question is that enough? Like, how do you know?
We don't.
Right?
We
So
don't.
especially if you're gonna put a push on to try to move the needle past the 3% to increase our base.
I know, and then Michelle.
I'm just double checking here, but based on what you said before, some of those studies are funded. So you can access funds to offset some of the ones that are not completed. So the 40 might cover things that not archaeological, not the others that you listed. So that would come from the province. You would have access to that. That would take care of that bill, and the 40 then would cover, I'll just call it miscellaneous and sundry. Kind of.
I wouldn't call it miscellaneous and sundry because that would be undetermined and that would be, you know, that would not form part of the certification programs as we know them. I have to use historical evidence to determine what I'm going to put into a budget. And so far, do I anticipate, I mean, we have also put in the loan program into the county to afford for certain things to take place as well. Feasibility studies, as we brought up, is always a difficult one, right? It's one of the things that is generally not funded by upper levels of government. Because it is that in effect, it's basically funding research as opposed to funding actual work taking place on a particular piece of land. The current certification program allows for the province to provide 50% funding through eligible expenses or for eligible expenses. So for example, an archaeological study that is required on a particular piece of industrial land. That archaeological study may not be required on every single piece of industrial land as determined by, you know, experts that be. But the province generally provides 50%. The local municipality or private landowner also could be eligible. They would provide 25%. And then in that type of partnership, the county would provide the other 25%.
So it all depends.
It does.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah. It's starting to make some sense. Thank you.
Michelle.
I think just building on what Councilor Thorpe was saying. So if our priority is the development of industrial lands, right, because we need to diversify the input tax base, what would be the number one thing that we need to do today? And then just running the lens of the different models, which model would enable us to get there faster?
Through you, Chair, to the council. I assume you're asking from the county perspective, not the local perspective. I just want to clarify.
Yes.
Okay,
But
perfect.
but there might be some collaboration of
Yes,
that
absolutely.
relationship.
It's a win-win with
Absolutely.
industrial.
So in a perfect world and not based on this budget, my number one would be to secure land.
Ready to.
That is the number one. And I say that from a local perspective as well as a county perspective, so it's kind of a misnomer that I asked that question, but I was just curious. I think that's number one. As we have told you, the vast majority of our industrial land or potential employment land rests in the hands of private owners who oftentimes make decisions based on their own interests, as they should, that make it difficult for us to develop and capitalize on opportunities. Or that opportunity becomes a bit of a market pressure situation when there is an opportunity that lands. It is always a difficult process with respect to resourcing the public ownership of lands. However, it has proven time and time again to be a very successful investment for most municipalities, particularly at this time. So that's number one.
But under the new model, is that easier to do, or is there a difference in terms of how we can do that?
An economic development corporation has an advantage in terms of the advice that it is able to provide to industry and to municipalities that is considered a little bit differently than that of a municipality itself in terms of providing that advice. And so from that perspective, I would say yes, an economic development corporation has more flexibility to be able to engage in both the advice, consultation, as well as potentially the acquisition of lands.
Brian, I don't know how to put up my hand, so.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think everything Kara said is correct. But if we go back to Michelle's original question, which is, what is the number one thing to do? And then her secondary corollary question was, does the Economic Development Corporation make that happen faster? Kara's hit it right on the head. The number one thing I think you need to do is assemble lands and have ready lands available. That's exactly what she said. And that has been extremely hard to do in a two-tier system traditionally. But that doesn't mean that the county couldn't do that. Kara's right. The board would, a Economic Development Corporation could give different advice but Kara and I have looked at this several times before about the county acquiring land and having an industrial area in each of 3 areas in the county. And while it is possible, it might be just a little harder to do in a county setting, but it is possible to do, right, Kara? Maybe you just want to comment on that.
Yes, we have looked at that in the past. We have gone as far as to identify those with the greatest potential. It is possible for a county to own lands and to designate them for industrial use and to be more engaged in the process. That always creates a little bit of, I won't say friction, I will say curiosity in terms of the decision making. But it is possible for that to happen. An Economic Development Corporation has added benefits in terms of its ability to foster maybe more revenue or maybe more conversation with respect to that, but it is possible for the corporation of the County of Middlesex itself to invest.
And one of the things, Brian, I just would mention about, there was a question earlier about the the fact that we have an economic development corporation by name already. Kara mentioned that, and then Michelle asked that question that was kind of related to that, because I think she said, well, I didn't know we had one. And we do have one for this purpose, because it was set up to sell and lease out 50 King. Why was it set up and done that? Well, because we wanted to separate sort of that function from the corporation of the County of Middlesex, because there are challenges legally and otherwise with selling and retaining and purchasing and doing a bunch of different things as the corporation of the County of Middlesex that we ran into in that process, and Kara and I ran into in the process of trying to acquire lands and service lands across municipal boundaries as the corporation of the County of Middlesex. And so it was set up as the best way to say it is a legal vehicle for the 50 King Street property, and something similar was what we contemplated whenever we looked at these things before, Kara, for these sort of 3 industrial parks.
What are the questions? It really does look, the committee, I think at the end of this, needs to make a recommendation to council, or can provide a recommendation to council of a direction. But council has to have that same understanding of what the difference will be. I think that's the whole, and it is, to me, it's like, what's the biggest bang for our buck? Because when I see unless I have it wrong here, I see cost-wise to the taxpayer is the same, or very close to the same right now. I think the difference I see is, like, if you go with a corporation, we're not going to have say in whether you hire 2 more people or not. That's going to be done by the corporation. That will be done by that board and by the corporation in the future. It's just like some other entities are now. Yeah.
But David, I think it's very interesting that you have a service agreement that fixes the obligations of the county for 3 years. So I find some comfort in that.
I do too.
I think it's also whatever the board, the new entity, if they decide to move in that direction, the KPIs are gonna tell the story. So
Yes.
if you're not performant, that's the end of that, and there's no funding going forward. So there is an accountability piece that looks like it's built in here. So
I agree. I like the 3-year, the commitment to a 3-year too. Kathy, you had a question.
Not a question, and I think that's a really good point, Sue, about the KPIs. I think if they can be really, they can be quantified, I think. And then again, the agreement between the corporation and the county, I think we can put some specifics in that. But I just wanted to say, Kara, I think that you did a very good job in laying this out. And I think, I don't know what the issue was when the consultants came to council, but there seemed to be some confusion about what was being presented. And I just think it was very clear. So I think you did a great job.
Yeah, it's certainly, it sorted it out, because I think what happened when they came and brought that presentation, it's like, they said, need an extra $1 million. They said, we gotta pay $1 million. And that seemed to be the focus of the people I talked to at that time. So yeah, I really appreciate this, how it was brought up. Other questions here for Kara?
Just a follow-up on that, if and when we do make a recommendation, I think it's really important that kind of the essence of the discussion that we had is presented to the entire council, so that there's some greater understanding of that.
So,
That's the key point. When people are presented with something new, you get to this point, some piece of information falls there. This here, what is said after, is not digested or heard until this. So it's iterative. People need to hear things, understand, digest, ask the questions. There may be, we'll come up with other questions too. I mean, as we digest this in our brains today, like we're getting to a point where some of the pieces are falling into place. So this makes sense, but there'll be other things that will come up. But council will need that same time to digest and think, or have a coherent presentation that will lead them to ask questions that maybe are relevant to their communities or their geographies or whatever. So, yeah, we think,
But just jumping like on what Michelle said, like I know this just even at the local level, when you've got your finance committee making recommendations to council attached to the budget, like the communication is very clear, whether that's gonna be, you know, we're not actually gonna spend any money on winter control. And these are the reasons why, you know, like you, and so again, whatever you guys decide is the recommendation, the communication behind that really needs to be attached to that recommendation, right?
did we think of things we don't know?
Anything else? Anything else you want to add, Karen?
Through you, Chair, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to present it. I understand it is a different concept. It's different for myself as well, you know. And I think it's really important that you understand that I am here to present the information to you. I'm here to present to you also understanding the fact that I think there is not less but more accountability when it comes to the Economic Development Corporation because of what it represents, because it is a change of doing business. And I thought it very important to present you with something at least to consider at this point, knowing that it is not additional funding, it is transitional funding. It comes with a great deal of responsibility and accountability, and it is all things recommended either way are in the best interest of the county as a whole. And that is why they're both being presented the way they are. So if I can help in the process of the communication, I'm happy to do that. I always think it's important to bring in, you know, external experts when you're looking at this, but I also understand the need for really consistent, reliable communication to council.
If there's nothing else.
I just have a comment.
Go ahead.
I wouldn't mind making a motion to receive her proposal, the proposal, but before we release her into the wild, I want to have a discussion about scoring. She needs to be included in the conversation.
Okay, so, but for this portion, no other questions, moved by Sue, seconded by Michelle, in favor. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
I just wanted to run it out.
I just thought I should sit down.
Oh, no, I've been asked to stick around
Oh,
for a little bit.
I would say just for a start, do we want some heat on in here?
I'm on the slide.
No.
It's just really noisy.
I understand we're still live.
Or do we want to break for lunch? Because Kara has to stay for Middlesex County Connect as well, so
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Lunch.
I'm just
What's the wish
asking
of-
Steve.
I don't think it's here yet.
What's most efficient?
We'll motion to adjourn for lunch.
Sure.
Okay, moved by Sue. Sorry,
I don't see if lunch is here yet. Lunch may not be here yet.
do score.
okay, let's do the score first.
Yeah.
Talk
And
about
then
score.
Okay.
All right, we'll do that. We'll carry on. We'll talk about score and do that piece of it.
Okay, good idea.
All right. Are you going to start on that or who's starting on score? Is that you
Through,
said?
through the chair to the committee, I guess at our previous meeting that we had, we started, SCORE is considered one of our 3 business cases. So we have that listed. SCORE came and did a very detailed presentation to County Council. And County Council at that time recommended that the discussion be referred to the Budget Committee. Again, it's about a discussion in regards to the membership of SCORE. I'd remind the committee again that that is a cost of $30,000. So at our last Budget Committee discussion, we referred it so we could bring Kara in to continue the conversation. And it really was to have a good conversation around how does the SCORE membership tie, especially to the Economic Development Department and all of the great initiatives that you're working on.
Yes, speak on it.
I am, it's good.
Their voice.
We're going
Well-
to talk about it, but nobody's speaking on it.
What I guess I would say
I
is
guess I want one.
ask the questions, but.
Sure.
Am I here as a SCORE member or am I here as a county member?
County. But still, you're on the board, so you can at least some information.
I guess I'd like to know from the overall, like 10,000 feet above the earth kind of thing is, what your involvement currently is with SCORE. And if what value or no value you see in it, or if you have any involvement at all. And under the new proposed model, is that a partnership that, because quite frankly, we don't know all the memberships that we currently have and what fees are, and I would want that going forward before we make any decision regarding the department you're respective. I was just curious as to what they all are, and what they do. So in keeping with that, I'll stick to my basic question, I guess, is what is your involvement now with SCORE benefits or areas of opportunity where they can step up and provide better support or assistance to the counties?
And Kara, can you also mention the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus Economic Development Initiative as well? Because I think that's fits in nicely with Sue's question too.
Right, through you, Chair, to the council member, and in respect of the CAO's comments. I do have a long history of working with the SCORE group. I was part of things with respect to running a community futures corporation during the establishment. And I think it's important that you know the background of the organization when you're evaluating its current purpose and mandate. SCORE was originally established by the municipalities in the region during the transfer of dollars from the federal government with an intention of diversifying the economy away from tobacco growing. At the time, there was a considerable funding that was coming from the federal government and was going to land in the hands of someone to administer on behalf of the federal government with respect to regional investments to diversify the economy, particularly for business investments and community economic development investments away from tobacco. SCORE formalized itself as an organization at that time with the intention of being the administrator of that fund. That did not happen. The administration of that fund was actually chosen to be put into the hands of the community futures corporations, because at that time, community futures corporations have been long established by the federal government as organizations which have the capacity to deliver community economic development, but also funding particular loan investments into businesses. And so SCORE formalized itself, but that original intention was never realized. For a few years, since I have been Director of Economic Development, the SCORE membership was included in the Economic Development budget. And many years ago, I presented to Council and we had some very pertinent conversations with respect to it not being an economic development function. That I saw the role of the SCORE group as one of political advocacy for the municipal members. I still believe that and hold that to be true today. I do not see SCORE as an economic development corporation. I see SCORE as a vehicle for political advocacy for that particular region or its particular members. And therefore, have always said that if council felt there was value in that political advocacy, that is why they should choose to fund or not fund SCORE. It should not be looked at as an economic development service line item or membership. So in terms of the economic development involvement, I am named to an economic development committee of SCORE and have been for the duration of my time here.
So sorry, repeat that.
I am named to a SCORE economic development committee. I will be honest in saying that there have been few meetings that have been realized during the course of 2024. We did have one booked for either this Friday or next Friday that has subsequently been canceled. So we have not had a lot of engagement from the economic development side of things. If I was to speak to the role of SCORE in terms of providing economic development services, I don't see that function as being inherent as part of that. I see, some of the things that council has brought to light in terms of the value that they have placed on it over the years, but I think that it very much resonates with my feelings and my experience with respect to it being a political advocacy function. To the CAO's point, with respect to the work of the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus, I would say that there has been greater engagement from an economic development perspective, certainly over the course of the last couple of years, and some priorities realized for the benefit of the entire Western Ontario region with respect to workforce development and some other projects that we've been able to collectively bring together. Again, it's fairly new in terms of Western Ontario Wardens Caucus having its formality, so that is a growing, effort, I would say.
I was asked, just to further to Kara's comments, I was asked to sit on the Economic Development Committee for Rousey, and they have monthly meetings. The range of topics and there's regional consideration to what works where. Ideas are brought over from various people who are working specifically in different kinds of projects. I think it's a very integrated kind of approach because everybody can hear it, everybody can share it. The idea of so I think it's still early days in some ways, or maybe early days for me because I was trying to catch up too. But at the same time, if I have to put those two side by side, I see a clear thrust to the workforce, what kinds of, housing is needed, what kinds of skill sets, all of those kinds of topics are being discussed there. So it's clearly economic development. And I don't know if we pay something to them. I don't think so.
Yeah, your fees went up. Yeah, your fees went up over time. Your fees were a lot lower before they entered into the, or not, I shouldn't say a lot lower, they were lower prior to that. And then they
$100,000, I think is your point, right, Val?
That's right.
Okay, yeah, so I'm just saying that.
Sorry, just for clarity, so there's a WOMC membership fee?
Through the chair to the councillor. When we go to the admin budget, yes, there is a membership for Western Ontario Wardens Caucus.
Oh, that's okay. So I'm just saying, in terms of checking boxes, I think we get more bang for our buck, and the benefit of working together with maybe partners who have the same kinds of ideas, projects, or needs that we as a county have.
Kathy.
I'll start with the WOWSI thing. I agree with you on it. I still think it is early days because I think it was maybe set up. Was it set up, I think, when Allison was warden?
That's exactly right, yeah.
Because she sat on the Economic Development Committee because it kind of came out of COVID. So it is, I still think that it's early days. So I sat on it when I was warden. Ina sat on it.
That's right, clarify, so the ECDF committee of WOC. Started when?
So it's max 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years, right? And I can see it growing in that when you see how WOWC over the last X amount of years has, I think, built up their infrastructure. They have now dedicated full-time staff as opposed to seconded staff or as opposed to borrowed staff. They have their own staff, resources. So I can see that as being a growing thing.
That's interesting, I didn't know
Yeah,
that, so I don't know how many councillors know that.
So that's why, so I can definitely see some cachet building with that, because again, instead of just 5 counties, you've got what, 13 on Massey. So, you know, you really are, it really is a region. Powerhouse. So with SCORE, I would echo what Kara has said, and I would echo that as both a county member and as a board member. If I put my board member hat on, I really think that they are constrained with only asking for 30,000. So for years, when they first started, the membership fee was $25,000, and it was $25,000 forever and ever and ever. And I think it was what, 2 years ago or just last year. And I was saying, you should be asking for 50,000. Like if you actually want to do something, like 5 municipalities up there, that's $150,000. And yes, much like the work that Kara does, you can find money from other pockets, but of course that's not guaranteed. And a lot of their work is looking for other money, right? But I definitely, and as a board member, and I have said this to the staff there, they have primarily become an advocacy group. And because again, and I just go back to dollars. There's not much that you can do with $150,000. So, you know, to the point of what value does it bring to Middlesex County? Again, with my county hat on, I would say, I think over the last number of years, we have increased our advocacy efforts. We have become much more of a stronger voice when it comes to working with the province, working with the feds, that sort of thing. So we've taken on advocacy in a way that we necessarily weren't doing, you know, a number of years ago. I think that with all due respect to the group there, they are trying to find a way for them to remain relevant and to do something. And they could, if perhaps maybe they focused on one thing. But, you know, we go to Roma, we go to AMO, and our binder is almost as thick as this because the one thing is they've created, SCORE has created a name for themselves with the province. They get face time with ministries. They get that recognition. But, you know, we're in front of education. We're in front of economic development. We're in front of transportation. We're in front of infrastructure. We're in front of a lot of ministries. But like, let's focus on one thing, because maybe if we focus on that one thing, maybe actually something will happen, right? They have to pick a lane. And I think maybe, I don't know, I think the thought is as I've sat there, because I've only been on the scoreboard like this term. And I think I see the wheel spinning in that, okay, if this is where we're going to go, we're going to ask for infrastructure. And maybe if that fits, maybe then that'll be our thing, right? And to be quite frank, the projects that they are interested in, with the exception of transportation, I think that there's a lot of information that they do have with transportation that is relevant to what we're doing here. But a lot of the other projects that they've advocated for, that they've worked for, really don't have a lane in Middlesex County. So I've often found that sitting around the table. You've got 5 members, and I've often found, oh, that really doesn't pertain to us. And yes, looking at a region, it will benefit, but you don't necessarily see the actual benefit trickle down to Middlesex per se.
And I like the councillor's comments. I agree, and I really feel it's, at this point, there's a sense of desperation about what's happening or what they're trying to do. And I keep coming back to the geography, especially the further away we get from the that side of county to this side of the county. I really don't see value. $30,000 might not be a lot of money, but it is a lot of money. if we can invest it properly, we can get bang for our buck. I just don't see the value of it. I could see it perhaps the temp center side where there are some synergies or
Yeah,
opportunities to participate, but I just don't see it for our county.
I think
And oh, sorry.
history, Michelle, I don't know.
Just a second.
Yeah.
So like the 5 counties, I can't remember if you said are Middlesex, Oxford, Elgin, Norfolk, and Brant. So that's what started. So then Elgin at one point, they pulled their membership, but Bingham, they came in, they took that membership, and for years, Bingham was there as a member. And then however that happened, and Elgin came back in as a member. It might be something
So
that
we,
you could, like,
Temp center.
yeah, Lucan Biddulph could come in as a member, like anybody could come in as a membership, and I do wonder if some of the work that they are doing can support some of more of that localized local municipality work that's being done as opposed to the broader work that the county is doing. And I would also say that I think that some of the counties don't have as a robust economic development department as we do.
So it fills a need there.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Bill. You were going to speak?
Yes, sir. I was going to say, just to follow up on something that Ina said, she said $30,000, and that's right. It's may not seem like a lot of money, but what actually makes it a lot of money is resourcing, and that's the part that has really, like, the $30,000 is a rounding error in something the size of Middlesex County, but I always think of it as a capacity thing. Like if you're going to have to do SCORE and some of these other things, I can only spread the group so far. And Michelle says to me every once in a while, like, we're really thin, and we are. But every time you go one step more or add one more thing, then you almost have to add another person. And then it becomes really, that 30,000 becomes 180,000 all of a sudden. And that sounds silly, but I mean, that's the level of thinness or how low our capacity level is to take on some of these things. And it would give us back some resourcing if we weren't participating, because we can only spread so thin, Brian.
That's like there's per diems, there's mileage
Well,
for people around there, so it's not just
I was
$30,000.
gonna add that, Sue. So again, you're paying for my meeting time, for Sharon's meeting time. We do a lot of the meetings virtually, so there isn't transportation, but occasionally there's the option there. And then I would say, to the resourcing point, again, they get a lot of FaceTime with ministries. So then, you're asked to present at Roma, you're asked to present at AMO, at Good Roads. And so now again, you're spreading thin because I've got to present on behalf of my local municipality. I might be asked to step in for Middlesex County or for, that sort of thing. So that's where you kind of get pulled.
Michelle.
Right, so I sense where this is gonna land. But it's just the timing of it, right? So it's unfortunate because Temp Center won't have a decision on this until after their budget. It's just one of those kind of things. That's it, Temp Center does decide to pursue. That's all.
So I will say that okay, sorry, Cindy, go ahead.
Thanks to the chair and councilors. I just want to follow up on more of the questions that I was asked. So in our budget, we actually have $23,000 that will go towards Western Ontario Work Caucus. But I want to remind everyone that's more than just the economic development piece of it as well. It's the entire fee that we pay. And also, just as a reminder for anyone that may be watching, if they want to learn a little bit more about Western Ontario Words Caucus, they did do a delegation to County Council in July of 2024, and it was very informative and did provide a good overview of everything Western Ontario Words Caucus does for the region and for the county of Middlesex.
Thank you. My only comment would be, I don't think it's any secret that I'm not the biggest supporter of SCORE, but it's absolutely no disrespect to our representatives on SCORE and the work they do.
Or the staff, at SCORE.
That's right. There's no disrespect meant. But it is, and I know to your point, Ina, about $30,000, not that much money, but no matter how many zeros it is, it's, are we getting the right bang for our buck? And I always go back to that, are we getting value for our money? And from a personal standpoint, I haven't seen a change in that, where I'm seeing value for the money, for the county, for the entire county, and so that would just be the comment of it. Anything else on scope? Nothing else?
I appreciate the background.
I do too, the background and also to Kathy's comments as well, everyone's comments on this, it's just their thoughts, and if there's nothing else, we'll need a motion, I think, for this, correct?
But to receive the.
To receive for information.
To receive the conversation.
Okay, Ina, Sue, all in favor, carry, thank you. That's all. Are we stopping for lunch?
Stop lunch.
Okay, I need a motion to adjourn for lunch.
Oh, sorry, I
Ina,
did the last one.
oh, sorry, Paul,
Sorry, I'm not there, but recessing, can you state the time we're gonna come back so the live stream people will know?
Live stream people.
1 o'clock.
We're watching.
Return at 1 o'clock, I don't know what time it is.
Nobody's watching.
1 o'clock.
There's just me and your sister on here, Kathy.
You knew what I was asking.
Adjourn to come back at 1 o'clock? Earlier? What time? 12:30? Okay, 12:45. 12 to return and come back at 12:45. All in favor?
Who's in next?
So it was Ina and Sue.
Okay, you're here.